Okay, hello everyone and welcome to Success Coaching's CSM Mastermind series. My name is James Scott and I'm delighted to be here again today for another discussion with three CSMs that have been recommended to us as experts in their field and who are going to help us unpack the topic of why do customers go dark? And I know that's a topic that a lot of CSMs grapple with, you know, that moment when you have a customer, you have a conversation you want to have with them, and for some reason you're unable to engage with the customer, you're unable to get them on the phone. We all have different names for those customers. I've heard ghost customers, zombie customers, but at the end of the day, a lack of engagement generally is concerning, is not a good sign, and it causes a fair amount of heartburn for CSMs. So what I want to do in this call, what I hope we're going to do is hear from some CSMs about their own tips, techniques, tricks for number one, preventing customers from going dark, becoming disengaged in the first place. But number two, when it does happen, which inevitably it will, how do you try and get back out of that situation? How do you re-engage with a customer that isn't speaking to you? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is a live call, so if you are listening to this live, you do have the ability to ask questions to our speakers. You can do that using the Zoom webinar chat functionality. So please, at any point during the call, post questions in there, and I'll try and weave those into the conversation as we go along. So without further ado, let me introduce our three CSM panelists today. From Rimini Street, we have Sean Rydell. Sean, welcome.
Thank you.
From Angola, we have Ashley Smith. Hello, Ashley.
Hello, thank you.
And from HubSpot, we have Hadar Shur. Hello, Hadar.
Hi, everybody.
So thank you for being here. I'm excited to hear some of your own experiences on this topic. Why don't we just kick things off, and I'll let each of you just introduce yourself, a little bit about the job you're doing now, and your customer success journey to date, how you kind of got from to this point in your career in the role you're in right now. So Sean, why don't we start with you?
Great, thanks James. Thanks for having me today. I am currently the Director of Client Success Strategy and Programs at Rimini Street, but most recently came out of the account management ranks where I managed about a $13 million book of business. Rimini Street specializes in core support and managed services for SAP, Oracle, and Salesforce.com customers. So it's a little different business model than the typical SaaS customer success manager, but most of the same things apply or can be tweaked or twisted so that they apply.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thanks for making the time to be with us today. Looking forward to hearing some of your experiences, both SaaS and non-SaaS. Either way, $30 million. That's a big book of business. So I'm sure you've had a few times where customers have gone a bit dark on you, and with that size of account, I can imagine that's a little concerning. Yeah. So we'll hear more about that in a moment. Ashley.
Sure. So Ashley Smith, and I work at Algolia, Customer Success Manager. I've been in customer success for about 4 years now. And at Algolia, it's a highly technical product. We are a search-enabled API. And I have a massive book of business from tiny accounts that are paying, well, not tiny, but smaller accounts that are paying, close to $20,000 to $40,000 yearly, all the way up to those that are closer to 7 figures even. So big book of business. I came from account management originally on the marketing side, and it was such a great transition because I love technology.
Great. Yeah. Fantastic. Good. I look forward to hearing more about that experience and that journey. And then last but not least, Hadar, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thanks, James. Hadar Shor over here, Principal Customer Success Manager on the Strategic Accounts team at HubSpot. HubSpot is a software as a service platform that provides marketing, sales, service, and CRM tools to help businesses grow better. And in my role here, it really has evolved. I've been at HubSpot for about 6 years. When I joined, the role was actually called account management and involved a lot more elements. As the industry kind of transitioned, it originally included, renewals and selling and customer success as we know it today. And over time, it's transitioned to more of a true, what we know it as today, customer success role, dealing with onboarding, technical aspects, connecting customers with product teams, and more. And my customer base primarily tends to be on the more technical and complex side, so dealing with our most highly sophisticated customers here at HubSpot.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you, all of you, again for being here. So let's get into the topic. It's one that I often teach as part of workshops that I do with various companies, and it's always one that the CSMs are very interested to hear. How do others do this? How do others deal with these types of situations? Because I think a lot of the time we feel maybe this is an issue that just we're having, and we're not sure if it's something we're doing wrong, or is it just the way customers are. So everybody tends to be very keen to hear other perspectives and on why this happens. So let's focus first of all on that. Why customers become disengaged? Why do they go dark? Hadar, maybe we could start with you. In your experience in some of the, maybe at HubSpot and other parts of your career, when this has happened, what are some of the reasons? Why does this occur?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a very long list. I would say at the extremes, we have the best case scenario, customers are busy implementing all the different things that you're talking about. And as a result of being so busy with all of those items, they don't have the time to reply to your email. That's the best case scenario. Naturally, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the scenarios where a customer is maybe considering a competitive product and feels uncomfortable telling you about that. But I think the most common scenarios have to do with more of the day-to-day. It could be your point of contact has turned over. It could be that maybe the things that you're talking about are not the highest priority for the customer. I think as a customer success manager for one individual company, it's very easy to forget that your product and service is one piece of what your customers do. So they're busy with a million other initiatives. Oftentimes, if they go dark, to me, that's a signal that the things we're talking about are potentially not the highest priority for them. And maybe we need to have a conversation about what those priorities are so I can better position and align the value of our discussions to that.
Got it. Yeah, it's a great reminder, right? That there are lots of reasons why customers go dark, and kind of trying to resist that temptation to go to the bad assumption, like to assume it's a problem, because it may not be. And actually be interesting to hear from others, like, in your experience, is it usually an issue when customers go dark, or is it actually more often than not turns out to be something kind of quite innocent that you need to have worried so much about? Ashley, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Hadar mentioned, we are one of many tools that our clients are using. And you can imagine that with every tool a client is using, there's one of us reaching out to them, trying to get engagement. So it's not always necessarily an indicator that there's a problem. I would say you need to look at other factors. So did they have a successful onboarding? Are they successfully implemented? Are they logging in if there is a login? Things like that to pay attention to. If they are using the product in a strategic and appropriate manner, and you see that there's a lot of activity and they're not replying to your emails, but you have this kind of instinct that they're using it correctly, it might not be an issue. Doesn't mean stop trying. Just means maybe the heat is off on that.
Yeah, I think I've seen various numbers on it, but I've seen numbers between like 30 and in some cases as high as 70 different apps or tools are being used at any one point in time by a person in a company. And so, yeah, to your point, if you imagine each one of those has a customer success team and a customer success manager, reaching out to check in for 15 minutes, you know, that quickly would just consume the whole month.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great point. Sean, what about you? What have been your experiences on the, on kind of why this happens in the first place?
Well, you know, to support what Ashley and Hadar have both said is that, you know, Okta did a survey recently, their Business at Work survey, that said that every company deploys approximately 130 SaaS apps last year. So there's 130 of us all trying to get audience with the folks that we want to engage with. What I have found has been the biggest detriment to engagement has been not setting a cadence early. If I don't set a cadence as part of the success plan, then that cadence is hard to back into. But if we agree in the beginning that we're going to meet monthly or weekly, that agreement then will drive that engagement. And if they don't show up, that's when I start to probe. But as long as we have that cadence, I think that I feel a lot better about making sure that they're not going to go dark.
That's an interesting point. So yeah, what is healthy? What is healthy and unhealthy engagement? And the point you're making is that can vary from customer to customer, and even, I guess, individual user or contact within a customer account. So
and key to that is understanding how they want to engage with you. Do they like a phone call? Do they like an email? Do they like a Microsoft Teams request? So when you understand how they want to engage, then it makes it easier to get them where they want to talk to you.
Right. So do you make that you actually literally ask that question up front with a new customer?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's all part of defining success.
Got it. So, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing to just add on to Sean's point, because absolutely setting up that cadence early is just so important. But also the sales involvement. Sales should be setting up expectations on what customer success is going to appropriately deliver. And one thing that I've found helpful for retaining engagement is actually getting involved in that pre-sales process when it makes sense. So it doesn't always make sense, but let's say there's a contract in legal. We know that this is about to happen. Let's go ahead and have a conversation. Try to understand what it is that you are trying to achieve with our product before you've even been able to log on. And that has helped me with retaining that engagement.
Got it.
I would add on to Ashley's point as well, above and beyond, engaging people and asking what cadence they want to communicate in. There's very much a show, don't tell mentality that I try to employ to show value early on. I think, Ashley, you're referring to that in the sales process, even before they're becoming a customer. And that could mean even on the introduction or a kickoff call, providing value. Like, if you engage with me, here are the results that you're going to get from that interaction. So whether the communication is happening through, a project management tool or an email or a phone call, they're more inclined to involve you in some of those micro conversations.
That's a really interesting point, because you're basically saying that an engagement has to have value. Otherwise, why would they bother prioritizing it or giving any time to speak to you? So you're basically saying the earlier you set that expectation, not just by telling them it's going to be valuable, but actually delivering some value, the more likely it is that they will engage again the next time that you reach out to them.
100%.
Got it. Have you got any sort of tips on, right at the beginning of a relationship where you don't yet have a ton of knowledge of the account? How do you provide value? Like, they're probably not even using the software, right? So what types of value can you deliver early before they're even onboarded?
Yeah, I think a couple examples, and people are typically looking for this type of guidance, is what have other customers like you done before? There's so much information out there today with the internet. People are looking for someone to give them a frame of reference. And if you don't really have specific data or tool usage to rely on, going back and saying, hey, folks have seen success similar to you by doing X, Y, and Z, that's really helpful for people.
Got it. Any other suggestions from Sean or Ashley, on things that you can do up front to provide value? But actually, what do you do, for example, in that sales even before the contract's signed, you're having a discussion? What is the value that you're actually providing to them in those initial conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So the value I'm providing in those initial conversations is really more of a I'm going to be your point of contact, and my role right now in this pre-sales or kickoff, those early engagement periods, is to do some deep discovery. I need to understand, why did you purchase this product? What is your use case? What are your KPIs? What is your baseline? What parts of your organization am I going to be touching? More so asking those questions to understand early on what their pain points are and who I'm going to be engaging with, than necessarily providing value. But what I found is asking those questions and being that person who is, I'm here, I'm heavily involved, let's go, provides value. They entrust you. And when questions come up, they're not necessarily pinging support unless I tell them to, because sometimes that's a thing. But maybe they're coming directly to me for certain questions. Just instills trust.
Yeah. I mean, because you're being curious, right? You're showing, it's like meeting somebody at a party. If you just meet somebody and they just start telling you what about themselves and what you should be doing and what they think, you should kind of tune out. You don't enjoy that. But if somebody is asking you questions and seems interested in you, and then there's much more, it's much more engaging. So the more, even if you know information, even if you've had a good handover from the sales team, you could still ask questions or reference that information in a way that you dig deeper, and that feels good from a customer perspective.
Yeah, that's what we hope for.
Yeah, fantastic. So in terms of Sean, I wanted to go back to the point you made about asking around the cadence and things like that. What about the medium, i.e. email versus phone calls versus other types of communication methods? I mean, there's lots of options now out there, and email actually gets pretty noisy, doesn't it? So do you have any thoughts on how to personalize or optimize the way you communicate with customers? Kind of cut through that.
So what I like to do is, email is a medium that can always be misinterpreted. Everyone's going to read your words differently. The cadence that I've really innovated on is prescribing a process that I call office hours. It gives me multiple touches, and I usually host these office hours monthly. With new customers, I don't give them a choice. I kind of tell them, this is the way we do it. Every month we're going to meet. This hour is blocked off on my calendar. It's just for you. I'm going to bring you information that you can't find anywhere else, and I want to talk about your business. If you can't make it, that's fine, because I'm going to be disciplined and use that hour to learn about them, learn about their industry, learn about their competitors, learn about trends in their industry. Because what's going to make those engagements valuable is that I bring them something they can't get from somewhere else. That engagement is always video call or phone call. If they happen to miss the office hours, I always like to follow up with the content that I prepared. And content on the customer success side is an interesting thing, because marketing always has go-to-market materials, they always have sales materials, but they don't necessarily think about the part of the journey post-contract to renewal. And there are definite moments of truth within that journey that marketing materials could be specific for. Oftentimes, I kind of call and develop my own. Oftentimes, I can get marketing to assist with something, but it's picking materials that are appropriate to the part of the journey that they're on. I have had excellent success with office hours. Out of my book of business, about 70% of my customers have opted in. And of those, about 50% of them will attend regularly. So that's a great hit rate. It also gives me 12 touches a year versus the traditional EBR, QBR 4 or whatever that cadence is. And there's a psychological value to that office hours too, because I'm on their calendar every month. A QBR is on their calendar once a quarter, and they don't see it until the week that it comes up. So if they miss my office hours, I was on their mind that day, and then I'm on their mind the next day. So there's always not necessarily a physical engagement, but there's a mental engagement with my product and my services.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I can see how just being prescriptive can help, right? Rather than how would you like to do it? Here's what we recommend. This is what we do with our most successful customers. Does this work for you? At least then they, you're giving them the preferred option, and they have an option to opt out if they want, or suggest a slightly different cadence, whatever it might be, but you're leading with a suggestion. And I guess you could also ask, if I do need to get hold of you, what is the best way of doing that? Because I'm sure we all know people whose inboxes are just an absolute train wreck, right? It's not that they're ignoring you, it's literally that their email just disappears. Your email disappears almost the moment it hits their inbox, because they get such a high volume of email. There's other people who just, never check voicemails or just aren't phone people, right? So asking that question and actually understanding the individual and what their preferences are can help you tailor your outreach strategy.
And we forget that when they go into onboarding, really all they know is what they've seen on YouTube or Vimeo, or what the sales team has demoed to them. They are going to drink out of a fire hose for that onboarding process. So there is a desire to be prescribed to as they're learning how to come on board and how to best use the service. And once you get through that prescription phase and you understand their business, then you can get into the consultative part of client success, where now you can say, I notice that you do things this way. Have you considered trying X, Y, or Z? Selling, it's consulting. And getting them to use more features and functions should always be a consultative approach, as we all know, because customers look at account managers as salespeople almost. That's why we've had to transition this industry to truly look at, how do I get you from point A to point B, and really look at clients in more of an advocacy model versus the account management renewals model. Right. If I can get you to advocate for me, then I'm going to be pretty confident that you're going to renew, and you're probably going to use more things or buy more stuff. It's very important to keep those 3 items in that order: advocate, retention, cross-sell, upsell, because when you have advocates, the rest is just a byproduct.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. And you made an interesting point I want to go back to around the marketing piece, customer marketing. And I'm going to ask you, Hadar, this one, because HubSpot has kind of a reputation for being a great content company, right? You put out a lot of awesome content that helps businesses all over the world do a better job. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
How much of it you write, but it's awesome. But how do you think then at HubSpot? I imagine HubSpot thinks a lot about customer marketing and content that will be valuable and useful to existing customers, not just as an acquisition tool.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think content definitely comes in and plays a really big role as it relates to value in customer success. And really this is all tied together, because if you can't show value early on, that's going to increase the likelihood that someone will go dark on you. So what are some of the ways that you can provide value? I believe very strongly in providing different types of content to people. And very similar to the way that we think about content in a marketing setting, when we think about it as it relates to customer success, we need to think about who our audience is and what they need. So the types of content, as you were talking about, Sean, that marketing creates, you might have like a general template to work from, but it's really important to personalize to the folks that you're working with. A good example would be if you know that your larger customers are very interested in a particular topic, run a customized analysis for them on that and create a presentation out of that information. Versus maybe your smaller accounts tend to be more interested in having someone handhold them through a particular onboarding process, right? That would be a different workshop that you can then summarize and send a recording to them. I think content overall, having something to provide to someone is a great way, not just to provide value, but to begin to re-engage people that have gone dark. It's a strategy that I often use as a first line of defense. I think Sean talked about it a little bit. Hey, here are some of the things that I prepared for our call that we missed, so that they start to see the value and attend in future sessions.
Interesting. What would you say is the kind of ratio between content that you can kind of just pick off a shelf and give to customers versus things that you end up building yourself? Because I think that's where a lot of people probably listening to this struggle, is that they don't get a ton of marketing support, and really it's going to fall pretty much on their shoulders to build content that's going to be relevant to customers.
Right. I would probably estimate that the ratio is anywhere like 70% would be marketing or general best practices guidance taken off the shelf, and 30% customized. I think there's a lot of industry knowledge you can get simply by Googling a question and seeing what others in the industry have to say. There's an element to thought leadership, in my opinion, that has to do with sharing information of others as well. So even if, folks in your industry that are not necessarily your marketing team have created a piece about the best practices for topics related to your product, I think it's perfectly acceptable to share and repurpose those. And then the 30% would be taking that, customizing it for your customer's specific situation, whether that be data analysis in Excel, modifying a PowerPoint, putting together an analysis of the implementation plan, whatever it might be.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, I love that suggestion of like, doesn't have to be your content. It can be really, I guess you're curating content, and you might be building some as well, but actually a big part of the value that you're providing is you're cutting through the noise and just giving them things that are personalized and curated for their needs, and making their life easier. And that has value as well as the content itself. Yeah. Ashley, how do you approach the kind of, where do you find content? Do you have access internally? Do you build your own?
I do a little bit of both, and we work with various parts of the organization. So we're a technical product that is implemented by developers and maintained by developers, but we actually have a tool that can be used by marketing to understand, what search terms are most popular and where can we improve search to better our ROI. So when it comes to actually developing content or grabbing content that our marketing team has put together, I'm very curated when it comes to who that content is going to. So do we have a new feature that is meant to boost ROI, that is meant to dive into a little bit more of your marketing details and help you maybe even on the product side, things that you can learn from that. I'm gonna send those to the marketing team. That's going to be specifically for the marketing team. Maybe there's somebody I haven't spoken to on the marketing team, and I can go to LinkedIn and figure out who that person might be, include the CMO. And then as far as things that are meant for our developers, make sure the CTO is involved, curate that conversation specifically for the developers, help them see the benefit. You're going to have less implementation time. It's going to be easier for you to implement versus building from scratch. So very, very tailored. It's sort of a mixed bag as far as where the content comes from. I'd say on our side, it's probably 70-30, 70% me curating this content, right, and 30% actually coming from marketing.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. You touched on another topic there, which is like the fact there are multiple people within the organization. And I guess one of the challenges that is faced often by CSMs is your key person, the one that you focus 95% of your time with and on, mm-hmm, leaves or job role. And as much as they liked you, they didn't get around to letting you know. Mm-hmm. And you find out. Has that ever happened?
That has happened.
No, never.
So other than the LinkedIn title change, which is not the best indicator because it doesn't typically happen straight away, mm-hmm, though it's better than nothing. How do you deal with or prevent, how can you kind of protect yourself against that type of situation where you're left literally just like, I do not know where to go now. I have a customer and I have no contact left.
Yeah, on my side, I do account mapping. So I like to kind of know who are my hands on the keyboard people, who are going to be my everyday contacts that I'm going to be working with, all the way up to who was the person who signed the contract, who was that decision maker. So I sometimes build an actual literal tree within my Confluence page. Sometimes it's just in my head to how this hierarchy goes. But I like to make sure that I have a good breadth within the account and make sure that I know who all I can rely on outside of that main point of contact. That's the biggest part to me, is making sure that you have, I say more than one, but as many as possible contacts, so that if something like that does happen, especially when it comes to a decision maker, you can hopefully have some internal advocates who are touting the ease of your tool to whoever that new manager might be.
That makes a lot of sense. But now I'm going to ask the next question, which I'm sure is going through people's heads, which is, listen, I'm having a hard enough time keeping track and engaged with one person.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're telling me to have 3, 4, however many on an account. How often do I have to reach out to those? What do I tell them? I know them less well. I don't have a stronger relationship. So what do I do with those folks?
I would say on that, not to just hijack this conversation, but I would say on that, just know who they are. Reach out to them when it's appropriate with content that makes sense for who they are in their company. And one of the biggest things that we have implemented to increase engagement is Slack. So we actually have a partnered Slack channel where we have all of our enterprise customers have their own private channel. We tell them to invite anyone that needs to be on it. And it has really helped with keeping customers engaged, because they can just very quickly shoot you a question and you see new people added on. Who is this person? What's their role?
Wow. Interesting. Anyone else use Slack or something similar?
No.
No?
No, I love the idea. I was going to jump in with something else.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go for it.
One of the things that I've personally set up is when a new user is added to kind of that user list, they get an automatic notification email from me introducing myself and with a link to my calendar. So that's one thing you ask, like, how do you manage that, having so many different points of contact in an account, but trying to still keep engaged with them. I think automating some of that, at least so people know who you are and can build that relationship, is important. Mm-hmm. And even if those people are not having regular consulting or strategy conversations with you, here and there identifying who those power users are, just shooting them a note to say, hey, it looks like you're pretty active. I wanted to send along this piece of content or this quick recommendation. So you're not spending a ton of time, you're automating where you can, but you've identified who your kind of second level points of contact are.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Actually, I know HubSpot does something interesting. We use HubSpot. And so I know in the admin panel, I can actually tell you what the roles are of different people in my organization. Mm-hmm. So I can say, oh, Todd, he's responsible for renewal and billing and invoicing. And Aaron, he's responsible for onboarding and getting the tool set up. And James, I'm the technical contact. So you've made it very easy within your product for me as a customer to tell you who cares about what in the organization. And I don't know how much you can share or how much you do with that information, but I could imagine how that would help you personalize those automatic communications and make sure that one person isn't getting too much or getting the wrong type of content hitting their inbox and thereby improving the relevance of what they do get and helping them stay more engaged with what you're saying.
Right. Certainly. I mean, it's up to a customer to update that information. Mm-hmm. There's no way to check, for example, if that's out of date necessarily, but yeah. I think as a regular part of the conversation, whether it's a quarterly business review that you're having with the majority of people, it's a good kind of gut check to say, are your goals the same? Have there been any team changes? Have there been any big business changes? And have your priorities changed in any way? And by having that as one of the really quick checks at the beginning of a call, you can make sure you don't lose sight of those people.
Right. Good stuff. Well, so let's, I think there's some good thoughts that you've shared around how we set off on the way we need to continue with a new customer, for example. Setting that getting that cadence right initially, asking them about how they want to be communicated to, providing value early, being clear about the organization, who does what. All this stuff is going to help engagement further down the line. What about the scenario where, and this happens a lot, I know, where you suddenly inherit an account, an existing customer, because the CSM has, changed, maybe they left the company and now you've suddenly got a book of business, you take on some of their accounts. What do we do there, right? We have no relationship, they're not new, so it's a different scenario. Sean, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what I like to do in those cases is I like to go back to the success plan, and not every CSM does one. If it's not ingrained as a part of the corporate culture, then the good CSMs are creating success plans. If I back into an account like that, then we start from scratch and we go right back to the success plan. What is it that's going to make you get value out of my product? What is it that's going to help you achieve your business goals? And I start from there and basically, go back to that pre-boarding conversation so that they get to know me, I get to understand them. I already know, hopefully through my research, what they do and a lot about their business, so I can bring some value to the conversation that way. But I think just going back to creating their own success plan with me allows me to jump into that account and start to gain that trust, because I'm interested in trying to move them along. Whether the last CSM did or didn't is irrelevant, right? It could be they were, and we just were picking up with a new face. Chances are, though, I probably do it a little bit different than the last person. So by understanding where their goalposts are, then we can start to drive forward. Got it.
And Ashley, I'm going to ask you, because you said, you have a larger number of customers that you're looking after. So I'm guessing you don't have a detailed success plan for every one of them. So all the customers says, hey, you suddenly get a new customer and they're paying you $20,000 a year. How do you introduce yourself to that customer? How do you get engaged with somebody?
Absolutely. So we kind of have a tiered approach over here. So a customer that would be paying around that much might get an implementation and onboarding help. And then from then we would say, okay, great. We're so glad that you're, set. Now we're going to transition you over to a support managed system. But for customers that have gone dark, to Sean's point, a CSM transition, maybe a CSM left and now I've picked up this account and they never spoke with the other CSM. Why would they speak to me? I can't find any notes anywhere. Who is this customer even? I'll do exactly what Sean said, where I will do my best to engage with somebody in the company and say, listen, I don't know what your priorities are or what your KPIs were that you set, and I'd love to start this relationship off from scratch now that I'm the one that's going to be taking over your account. And let's go ahead and establish some of these now. Sometimes what I'll do to actually get in the door there, because that happens often, we offer implementation reviews because we are a technical API product. We can see exactly how you're using our product on your website. And I'll offer an implementation review. I'll go to the website, get in the search bar, look for something. What popped up? Is it what I expected? Maybe it's not. And so I'll do a full implementation review and offer suggestions and build that case and send it along to any contact that I might have and say, listen, I'm your new success manager. Here's everything I found wrong on your site. Why don't we chat about it? And that kind of opens up the door for engagement and setting up that cadence moving forward.
Got it. So you're coming bearing a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Start off that relationship it's almost like a good opportunity for a fresh start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being disengaged. Yeah. Cool. So what other, let's say now let's focus on getting a customer re-engaged. And I think, you know, the point you just made, Ashley, is probably a tactic you can use with your own customers, right? That have gone disengaged, although it's a little bit of a different scenario. But let's say you've got a customer in your portfolio. Maybe you've had some engagement with in the past, but you just haven't spoken to them for a few months now, and it's beyond the time frame where you feel comfortable. What is the thought process you go through, like, before you necessarily move into kind of a panic mode? How do you think about this logically?
I'll jump in there. I think the first thing is to use the knowledge you have to assess what the potential reasons are for them going dark. If there is, for example, potential that they're no longer at the organization, you can do a really quick check on LinkedIn to see if anything has changed, to see if new people have come on board that would, you know, potentially put your customer at risk of maybe moving to a competitor. Even, you know, there's like tracking tools to identify, like, has something changed about their digital presence? There's all different kinds of ways that you can do those initial checks. And from there, I usually use what I call the escalate and warn early process, where, you know, I email, leave a phone call several times. I'm a big fan of video as well. So leaving like a video message that I'll email to them with a really, you know, clear subject line, like a video I created for you, containing that message to make it really personal. And if they still don't reply, I make it really clear that within X days, if I don't hear from you, I'll assume you're no longer the point of contact, and I plan to reach out to this other person. So in that way, you're kind of covering your bases with that point of contact without throwing them under the bus.
Got it. That's nice. It's like a pre-escalation warning shot. That
exactly.
They are still in the job. They don't want you to go and speak to their boss about the fact that they're not responding.
Right.
So yeah, interesting. Now you mentioned two things there, which I just wanted to go back to. One is you mentioned two pieces of technology. You said one that can monitor your digital presence.
Right. There's very simple tools online, like Ghostery as an example. Depending on what your product is, this may or may not be valuable. Okay. But for example, seeing scripts on a website, or there's tools online like Built With that let you see how certain digital presences are created. Or LinkedIn was another tool I mentioned, just checking some of those potential causes of a customer going dark.
Got it. So just ways to kind of look for clues that something is changing. Yeah,
exactly.
And then when you do the personalized video, I think HubSpot has something already built in, right? Or you have a partnership. What technology is that you use for the video messages?
There's a bunch out there. They're just screen recording tools. I think Vidyard is a common one. People use just a Chrome extension where you record your face and your screen at the same time. I generally recommend keeping it really short. The idea is just to make it really personalized and human to increase the chances of response.
Got it. Ashley,
that's fantastic.
Have you tried video messaging?
No, I was just actually making a note of that because I really love that idea. So yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I like it too. The one thing I would add though is let's not forget some of the old school tools that we learned along the way, and account planning is probably the most crucial element of being able to preempt a customer going dark, because by doing a very simple SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you can have a very good idea of what a customer's level of engagement are and the reasons why they may disengage with you. By using your strengths and your opportunities, you can help mitigate those threats and those weaknesses, but it's using an old school tool like that is dynamic. You have to be disciplined in doing it. If you have a book of business of 300 customers, it might not be realistic, but a SWOT analysis, it really helps you understand what you know and what you don't know. And then in your engagement process, you can probe for those things that you need to know.
Got it. It's kind of it's almost like the health of your knowledge of the customer. Like, so you can look for the areas where you need to deliberately find things out or to close these gaps or reduce the potential threats that could cause an issue later down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah. What other techniques have you used to try and get customers back engaged?
Well, Sean just said the word old school, which made me think of something that actually worked for me fairly recently. There was change in management. The CTO left. There was a new CTO. I reached out to him hundreds of times on LinkedIn. That's an exaggeration, but many times. Tried to email him, could not get anything. Thought that they were in Phoenix because that's where their headquarters is, and found out that they're actually here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Found out he is actually here in Atlanta. So I showed up at their office with donuts one day. Yep, I showed up with donuts and I said, I'm here to see so-and-so. And they brought me in, and he was impressed that I made the drive up there, and we had a meeting right there in his office and got them re-engaged.
Fantastic. Love it. The donuts or the pizza trick. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Days, but yeah.
And totally don't underestimate going at them sideways, right? If we keep calling them and we keep emailing them and the subject line is always about engagement, they may push away. With a client that I had up in Hadar's neighborhood, they went dark for a couple of months, and I finally just sent him an email with a subject line that said, "You could already be a winner," using some humor, and immediately within the hour got a response that said, "That was the funniest email I got today." So use something to go at them sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add subject lines are so important. I think especially when someone goes dark, it's easy for them to see yet another email from you and just kind of move it away. Find the subject line. If it does escalate, I'm concerned, to get someone's attention. Mm-hmm. Or something, like you said, funny can be really good at just capturing their attention to reply to you.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. Yeah, so what about, so actually you mentioned LinkedIn and you're trying to reach out on LinkedIn. So were you doing LinkedIn in mails to this person because you either didn't have their email or you weren't having any success via email?
Yes, I guessed at his email just based on the way other emails were for that company. Yeah. Didn't get a reply, have mixed max, and could see that they were not answering. And so then I just went in mail. Yeah. Right. And he didn't reply to that either. But he likes the donuts.
Yeah. Have you found that email though has worked in other situations where email hasn't?
Yeah, so. Yeah.
Because I know it's kind of like a separate inbox, right? And so that has its advantages. I think people tend to check it at different times of day. They'll check it, on their phone on the way to work in a little bit, kind of a different mindset. So sometimes it can break through the noise of the crowded, email inbox. What about text messaging, dare I ask? Any of you have text message exchanges with customers? Yes.
Only if they start it first.
Yeah.
Only because I kind of feel that's almost reaching into the personal. So
yeah.
I'll stay away from that one. But to the email point, I have found that the day of the week matters 100%. Mm-hmm. My hit rate on Monday, Thursday, and Friday is far lower than my Tuesday, Wednesday hit rate. Mm-hmm. So Tuesday and Wednesday seem to be the day that people are unburying from their Monday. Mm-hmm. They've got their marching orders for the week and they're starting to manage their work, and then we'll process your email. And then of course, time of day, right? I find that the very beginning of the day and the very end of the day are usually on Mondays or on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, the best time to find people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up actually, because you can, with many email clients now, choose to schedule an email to go out at a later time, right? So you don't have to, us being busy CSMs, quite often we're doing things at strange times of day, and you don't necessarily want that email to go out to your client at 11 o'clock at night, but you want it to be top of their inbox when they're commuting in the morning. So you can set that up. And I think, and also sometimes you can have there's some automatic tools, right, that actually choose the right time of day based on previous results with that email address, so they can actually automatically personalize it for the time zone and for the person even. So I think that any specific tools that you've used for
HubSpot
scheduling?
would be one.
HubSpot. Well,
Yeah.
I think I've heard of that one. Yeah. Yeah. So you have that built in that you can actually time the send. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Any other ones that plug in that to Gmail or any? I'm always looking for recommendations for technology, because I think those are the people love the recommendations.
Mixmax will do that as well.
Mixmax. Okay.
I think Boomerang on Gmail is a free plugin that does it as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Great. Cool.
James, one other thing I thought of as you were speaking is calling through the front. I think when we go back to like old school, how do we reach someone? Occasionally you call them directly at their desk. What are like other phone numbers or ways to reach them? Mobile phone, like have you actually tried that? Assuming it's a corporate mobile phone. And calling through the front desk, I find is surprisingly successful. Just being transferred to wherever that person is in the office.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. I like it. What about putting something in the mail? Handwritten note. It's another option, I guess.
I have sent swag before as kind of a quick engagement, but I don't know if it necessarily worked.
Cool. Well, it sounds there's definitely a few ideas that you've shared. So thank you for that. Any other thoughts before we wrap up today's call? Any other suggestions or tips or tricks that you didn't get to that you want to mention before we close things out? Are we all good? Great.
I think the goal is just don't give up. When you're ready to give up, try one more time.
On those wise words, I think we will say thank you to our 3 expert CSMs today. Sean, thank you very much. Ashley, Hadar, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights. Yeah, for those of you listening, we hope you found it valuable. We'd love to hear your comments and suggestions. If you've got anything to add to some of the things we've heard today, we'd love to hear them in the forum. So thank you very much. And we'll see you on our next CSM Mastermind next month. All right, good stuff.